I know interesting stories from them, what they want to share. But before we do that, we are on founder stage. We need to put them under pressure. So I'll give you 1 minute. You can take a bit more as well. I won't be timing you to this time. So do a little pitch what Lightyear is if everyone doesn't know. And the same for Adrian for Lightspeed, please. No. We need mics.
Okay, I can start with this one. So hi, my name is Martin. I'm building Lightyear. So we have a Lightyear versus Lightspeed throwdown today. So we are, in Lightyear, are building an investment platform in Europe. So effectively, like the short problem is that Europe doesn't really invest. Adrian comes from the US. US people, there's roughly 63% of the US people are investing. Europeans is 15%. So the problem with that is that people they're not accumulating wealth over the period of time. And I challenge you guys to think about what's your current net worth? What's your current runway? So we're in startup events, what's your runway? So if you lose the job today, how long you can be? And the average European can last 1 month. And, but at the same time, people expect that governments will take care of them. They have their own savings to be in a retirement age. And the problem is that it doesn't really work. The pensions are small, people don't have wealth. So we want to make sure that everybody is able to kind of start growing their wealth in early days and do that in a meaningful user experience, they understand what they're doing, low cost fees, and make sure that it's understandable if you're newbie or experienced person. I can do a quick pitch what we launched actually yesterday. So all of you, you keep the money in a bank. So all the money what's in your bank right now, so if you are in Eurozone, the bank earns 4%, and they give you fuck all. So effectively, bank earns a lot of money on all their money right now and effectively does not give anything back. So we launched something, I can show you on my shirt. If you keep the money in Lightyear now, we will pay you 3.83%. So almost the same rate what banks get. So you now can earn in the same way as a bank actually earns. So the reason we do that is that if you are deciding where to invest, you haven't decided what kind of stocks to buy and what not. In the same time, you can also earn their money. So the cash is the new instrument in the last kind of 2-3 years when the inflation has been going up. In the same time, as your mortgage goes up, bank pays you no interest. We decided to kind of change the game up and pay you interest at the same time.
Just a second. Yes, I'll also maybe give quick facts about Lightyear. So you kind of went straight to the point directly. So maybe then I'll say that you can open it up. It's a trading platform, right, with the news that you shared, and they are an Estonian-founded company from 2020. Martin Sokk together with Mihkel Aamer, yep. And they are actually top 30 Estonian startups by funding. So we do have this crowdsourced database of seeing all of the fundings coming into Estonian startups. So they've raised in total 33.5 million. The last round being 25, led by Lightspeed Venture Partners and Richard Branson. So quite cool, isn't it? But we're going to go more in detail in the next questions, like where they are targeting right now. They decided instead of going to one market to 22 directly. Why not, right? But Lightspeed, please.
Is the mic working?
Ah, perfect.
Wonderful, much easier. Yeah, so Lightspeed, we're a venture capital fund out of San Francisco in the Bay Area, and we founded in 2000. We're a multi-stage fund, so we invest from sort of pre-seed all the way through to IPO and beyond, depending on the sector. We're invest across sectors, so we invest in fintech, obviously, consumer, enterprise, AI, defense tech, clean tech, and beyond. And then we're global, so we're obviously based out of the US. We have offices in New York, London, Paris, Berlin, and then we're also in Southeast Asia and India, Singapore, and also in China. So we take a very intentional approach of backing founders throughout the life cycle, finding exceptional teams and missions that we're excited about and to partner on that journey. And yeah, couldn't be more excited to work with Martin.
Very good. So let's go straight to the first question maybe. How hard is it to scale in EU?
So
Martin.
it's an interesting problem. So think about Europe as like if you go far out, you can see like this is like one place like called Europe. Like technically, it's like 30 roughly various different markets with their own regulators, languages, currencies. Everything is different in a way. But like I think it's interesting to think about it. It has like 500 million people, so it's a lot of money and a lot of people. Like there's more people in Europe than in the US. And everybody tends to go to the US because it's like one big market and a lot of success out there. But at the same time, the opportunity or like the problem cap is much, much bigger in Europe. So it's harder to build because you need to build, like for French, you need to build in the French language, French localization and everything. In German, you need to do the same thing. And then you need to do Estonia, for example. And like Estonia has, if there's 500 million people in Europe, that Estonia has like one. So now you need to make a question like, are you going to build here something or not? But in the same time, so we are looking to the market what has retail investments, just people like us here or buying stocks and term deposits and whatnot, it's 19 trillion. So the market is incredibly huge. So if you're able to capture this market, you have like massive opportunity. So today, most of the money is in the banks. So people use banks. In the US, it's quite a bit different. In the US, people are effectively using various investment platforms to do the same job. Here, at least this transition has not happened. So effectively, like our thinking is that it doesn't really make sense to build a product in the UK or Germany or in Estonia. To actually make this work, we need to go after the whole market. Europe has some advantages, so you have unified, kind of some regulatory aspects are unified, so we can, for example, make a regulatory cover in one market and expand into many other markets. But at the same time, we're going to go after various different currencies, languages, cultures. Everything effectively has to be local. So our business is effectively global local. So you have general platform, but like you come to Estonia, you do Estonian language, Estonian accounts, same thing in Hungary, same thing in the UK, so you go market by market. So I think that's a rather interesting advantage coming from a small market because, like, sorry for all Estonians, but like it doesn't really make sense to build a product for Estonia because it's too small. But in the same time, we're able to go out and like build for France and Germany and whatnot, where Germans are not really able to do that because they built the product for their 80 million people in Germany, and now expanding that into France is really difficult because it's a German product. So effectively, we use this smallness, fragmentation to our advantage to build the moat, what is incredibly hard to attack because if you build the infrastructure to connect all the exchanges in Europe, then nobody else has that. So you know you can have a good service, low costs and everything. So using effectively the advantage of the small market.
Yeah, and well, basically thinking kind of local, like you said, global, local already from really day one was essential for you as well, right?
100%, because like, for example, a good example is like Robinhood is like our US competitor in that sense. Not really a competitor because they're not in Europe. They have tried to come to Europe, like I think 3 times already, failed every single time. So they think Europe or like UK in their case, like 51st state of America, and they realize that, oh, these people have different currency, different regulatory. They also speak different language. Like, yeah, it sounds similar, but it's not similar. It's like if you're like going to the US with the UK language, then it's going to be weird. So again, it's quite a bit cultural differences.
Yeah, thank you. Adrian, so you see a really global influx of startups coming towards Lightspeed on a daily basis. EU versus US. So what's kind of the importance of EU tech scene nowadays?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, taking a step back, if you look at the European ecosystem right now, it's something like 100 billion that's been invested in venture capital startups, something like 30,000 companies over the last decade. So it's really been a huge influx of capital and startups and company formation. I think if you look at also the number of net new founders that have started businesses, a number of new hires in the tech sector, we're actually almost on par with the US. And so if you look at the last few years as well, there's been a sort of net growth where in other markets there's been maybe a little bit of a pullback based on just sort of the sort of economic and macro condition. And so I think Lightspeed, we opened our office in London about 2 or 3 years ago. We've invested about north of $1 billion in sort of 35 European startups, and we're incredibly excited about where the puck is going. I think all the inputs are there. There's a lot of depth of talent and diverse talent across the European ecosystem. 4 of the top 10 universities are in Europe. And so I think, with all the right inputs, the right regulation, and the right sort of risk-taking appetite, Europe can catch up with the US.
And I assume, Googling, Lightyear is your first Estonian investment, isn't it?
Yes, we're really, really incredibly happy to work with Martin and Mikkel and the Lightyear team. I think we look at the European ecosystem and also the Estonian ecosystem, and candidly, I think you always look for these sort of pockets of community. If I look at sort of San Francisco and the Bay Area, there's 7.7 million people, and it represents something like 25% of all global venture capital. And the amount of sort of talent and the depth there and the sort of flywheel effects that have kind of formed over the few years, of the last sort of 50, 60 years, you're seeing the beginnings of it in Estonia. There was 10 unicorns, number of exits, a number of incredible startups in Skype and in Wise. And so we're starting to see basically the spin-outs of those companies and that reinvestment in the Estonian ecosystem. So we're kind of very happy to be here early.
Well, Adrian is here, so try to grab him if you're a founder to pitch your ideas, because he told me in a brief call that he does expect more talent to come towards him after now Lightyear being in their portfolio. But Martin, going to that, how did you actually attract Lightspeed to become your investor? And we are at founder stage, and I assume we have a lot of founders who are soon going to take this path or currently raising their investments. So share some juicy details.
I think technically Lightspeed came towards Lightyear. I think technically was that, but the way we have approached fundraising is we know that we have incredibly huge opportunity here. So to answer this opportunity or this big problem, you need quite a lot of capital. So we raised almost from the get-go, from the first day, 35 million, because we know that next 10 years, building the investment infrastructure takes a long time, a lot of money. There's a regulatory aspects what needs to be covered and whatnot. So we have been trying to not so much about raise money, but also more of to find who's the best partner in that journey. So the best partner in your journey is the person or the VC who understand what you're doing. They understand the problem. They have enough money to support you in that journey, and they have seen the good and the bad of this industry. Because if you take money from somebody who has just $1 million and they're gonna give you 10% of their money, then they're gonna freak out if there's gonna be rough times or whatnot. So going back to kind of Lightspeed is that, first of all, it's incredibly hard to explain US VC actually, what are we doing? Because the problem in US is totally different. So US has largely solved investment problem in to quite a significant extent. In Europe, there's a big problem. In US is less of the problem. So we found out that Lightspeed has actually built their own pitch. They have seen the same opportunity in the market. They figured out these kind of founders are needed to solve this problem. It has to be global, and what needs to be done is the infrastructure and everything. So it was a good match of problem understanding. Funding-wise, you guys have 25 billion fund, so it kind of gives us assurance that we can go for a long way. If you're going to do the next round, we know that Lightspeed is likely going to follow. It's going to support us in this journey, and I think the most important is that people who have actually seen how proper global startups are built, so they're incredibly experienced what we can actually pull out of the VC because they have hundreds of startups around them in various different places, so they can come in and effectively every quarter we have a board meeting, we have constant discussions about expansion, how do you capture these markets, what's the pricing models, where you should take risk today, where you should take risk in 10 years time, and figuring that out is rather difficult, so it's really helpful to have somebody with experience around you.
Wait, did I hear that correctly, that Lightspeed came to you? So how did that happen? So yes, all of that, I understand all of that, why it's such an advantage to have Lightspeed, but still you say that, founders who typically raise investments say they do hundreds of emails and then to up to hundreds of calls to get at least an investor to listen to them, and then you sit here and say, well, Lightspeed came to us.
Okay, before you're gonna answer, so there is a trick with VCs. I hope I'm not gonna offend you. VCs talk a lot. So if you talk enough VCs, they will spread the message quite a bit. So if you're going to have something exciting and to tell like a couple of them, it kind of spreads pretty fast. So you need to figure out what's
So basically,
what's
you created FOMO.
like that's the job.
Sure. No, look, it's a cottage industry. I think Man's right. No, look, we're always looking for exceptional teams and founders, and Man and Mikkel coming from Wise, and just had you're looking for exceptional leaders, but also people who can hire phenomenal talent around them. And we when we met, you'd hired from Robinhood, from Moss, from Revolut, obviously your Wise backgrounds. Then it's really around like the vision and the adaptability and the versatility for the founders, because things don't always go to the top right-hand corner, and there's a long journey, like Man mentioned, it can be a multi-decade journey to go public and beyond. And so we're looking for founders who can adapt in those environments and really expand. And what gets you from 0 to 1 doesn't necessarily get you to the 100 million in ARR. And so we want to see that extensibility, that plasticity of the thinking, if you will. And then look, I think it's around the market. We're incredibly excited. If you look at the US market, there's a very much higher penetration of equity participation from retailers. In Estonia is an exception, but it's much lower in Europe. I think it's like 55% of US retailers households participate in retail investments. In Europe, it's more like 30 something percent. And so there's no Fidelity, there's no Vanguard equivalent either in Europe. And so there's an opportunity here to really remove a lot of the friction, take a global mindset from day one. And Man and Mikkel had that very clearly written out, and I think you pay attention, and obviously a lot of the work was done before we even met.
Actually, if I remember correctly, you wrote the pitch, and it took like 2 years to find a broker where you want to invest in. So it took you for a long time as well to actually find the startup.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's right, absolutely right. Look, I think if we looked at the ecosystem 3 years ago, and it's still very much true today, a lot of the startups are either in 1 or 2 geos and haven't done a passport license to go across, haven't taken a sort of foundational approach to owning the core stack, and really being able to modularize the platform, actually take it into different geos. But then the other aspect is like you really need a localized approach from a compliance, a legal, and a marketing perspective. And we were just looking at the landscape and didn't see it. And so the fact that Martin and the team wanted to basically go to 22 geos and 27 eventually within sort of the number of years was exciting.
Very exciting, I would also say. We actually have a question for Votimo as well. So how do you assess the founders for those qualities you mentioned? Gut feeling is very nebulous and often biased.
Yeah. Look, I think we meet hundreds of founders, if not, if you think as a firm, we see probably 3,000 founders plus a year. And our job is really to, venture as an industry, if you think about the number of exits per year, there's 150 unicorns in Europe. There's probably about 40 exits north of 200 million a year. There's very few outcomes at scale. And so finding the pedigree of founders, the teams, the market that can sustain that growth and that ambition from day one is hard. And so we don't always get things right. And the fortunate thing about Lightspeed is we're multi-stage, and so we can hopefully correct our mistakes along that journey. But that's absolutely true. I think there are qualities in founders that you see within the first 30 seconds of a pitch. It just becomes very, very clear.
So what are these qualities?
It's like I mentioned, ability to hire. It's like clarity of vision. It's your ability to go really deep and segmented and understand all the nuances of what moves a market. I think a lot of exceptional founders are actually students of the game. They go and look at other companies before them. They look at the Airbnbs, the Ubers, the Spotifys, the UiPaths. What did Daniel do right at UiPath? What did the Vinted team do that were investors in do right as they scaled? And so you learn very quickly and you adapt and you apply those templates, and founders are masters of that.
Good. And then a couple of questions to Martin Lightyear and your product as well. So it almost works like a bank, isn't it? Have you considered making a card for Lightyear like Bylance does?
Maybe, like, it's in our backlog someplace, but like I think the problem is like the problem what needs to be solved is like so huge at the moment before we're gonna go to the card. Card is more of the question that can you spend the money without pulling it out from an investment account? Like our problem today is that none of the European markets are connected. Everything is incredibly expensive. User experience is like horrible. Bank takes 4% on all the money what you have in the bank. Like, how do we answer this? And like, none of these are like simple problems. So we need to go like market and do that. So we're focusing hard on the investment side. So actually, there's a problem. Like, why the investment like products are not so weak is that most investment products are offered by the bank, and like, sorry, but banks don't really care about investments. They don't make money on investments. Banks make money on if they give you a mortgage or a loan or whatnot. So this is the place where they make money. That's their business. So investing is effectively there that you don't pull your money out of your current account or other places, and you can keep that in that particular bank. So it's like ancillary afterthought. So nobody will start investing into that. So we try to be like opposite of that and like focus hardcore, making sure that investment is the best and be like bank after that.
Well, investment is the best. So what could be the ways that ordinary people like us could invest into Lightyear?
When in the future we're going to do the IPO, then you can buy the shares, I assume.
So, are you saying any promises out that you want to work towards that?
Like, I think like theoretically it makes sense because you are like investing into the public markets, and like in the end, like the platform what invests into the public market should be in the public markets. It gains trust and like visibility and like takes the owners quite close. But in the same time, like today we have like 1/3 of the Europe to conquer. We need to go in every single market really, really deep. It's a lot to build. So like today, like IPO would be a distraction for us. Also, we don't really need the money, what would be a potential outcome of the IPO. So we are rather good in the kind of the funding sector at the moment.
Good. And then maybe also elaborate a little on your monetization strategy for Lightyear.
So we earn money effectively in 3 different ways. We ask a small fee when you're doing a transaction. So a typical bank asks you 10 euros, we ask 1 euro. We take 15 basis points on your money. Bank takes 400 basis points. So 4% takes bank, we take like 0.15%. And the last part is FX. So bank typically takes like 1 to 2% on foreign exchange, will take 0.35%. So effectively try to do everything like 10 times better. But the problem is that like if we are able to scale this to the 500 million people, then we can charge quite a bit less than banks. So technically, it doesn't really make sense to pay 10 plus euros for a transaction because it costs like less than a handful of cents. So technically, it's actually rather cheap if you're building a proper technology, but the problem is nobody really is building a proper technology. So we are tech first, focusing not so much on like raising the prices, but how to lower the prices.
Good. Very noble as well. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. So maybe you would like to give some last takeaways, especially towards founders. So raising investments, maybe something, and then how to attract a really good investor like you.
I think many people think raising investment a little bit wrong. It's like they think about like it's a cycle. I need the money. I'm going to go and raise the money now. I think about it in a way that if somebody comes to you on the streets and says like, "Give me $1 million," and there's like first question is like, "Who are you? Why are you here? I don't trust you." I think it should be more about that. You have idea and you have a product and you're building your product, and at the same time you should go out and meet every single person out there. A, as a customer, try to sell your product, but B, also create the network that people start understanding what are you doing, why are you doing, because sometimes it takes time to explain. So for me, it took like more than 4 years before we actually met with Adrian and they invested in us. It's like 2 years before I started Lightyear, meeting various VCs and customers and tried to figure out the problem. And then 2 years after, I was able to build the product, and then finally we met. So in a way that met like probably thousands and thousands of people before it's going to happen. So it doesn't really make sense to sit in the office and hope that somebody will find you there. So networking is rather important.
Good. This is what we do here, all of us at Latitude. Yes, and Adrian, please.
Yeah, I guess, look, it's pedigree, but pedigree in different criterias of that. One can obviously be, you went to a great university, come out, and you get an operational job, and you go through the ranks, and you scale in an organization that spins out as a unicorn, whatever it may be. The other aspect of it is, there's a lot of incubators, there's YC available for founders. These are great networks for people to go in and learn from some of the best people, some of the best masters in the business. Networking really matters. I don't think these things happen overnight. You have to go and you have to really work on it. If you don't have a network, go and figure that out too. It's really important. And look, I think the rest of it's like you're not going to have the right idea immediately. You're going to go on a journey. These things take time. So finding the right partners really matters in that journey, and the right team. And then look, big market, something you're excited about, ambition levels. I think taking a step back and something we were reflecting on earlier was just in Europe, the willingness to go really and engage and be ambitious and be a little bit more optimistic and risk-loving really, really is the one thing that I'd love to see more of, especially from founders. We have all the right attributes for it, and we were having this discussion earlier today. Is there a difference between US and Europe founders and business mentality? There isn't. I think there are just as many early-stage startup founders who are just as hungry and willing to break down barriers to build exceptional businesses. So, yeah.
Maybe make one example of this is, so we are trying to build a business what captures like 19 trillion euros in whatever, 37, 30 markets. We are going aggressively in all of that. And I think the last board meeting, Lightspeed was like, guys, you need to be more ambitious. I was like, guys, so this kind of shows the level of ambition, I think, what's expected. So it's a good example, I think, like we always have a step further to go.
Good. Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause for Adrian and Martin.